This is Thimble, our family milk cow. She really is the star of the show here on our homestead, and we could not imagine our world without her. So every morning I get up, I head out to milk her, and so right now she really is in peak production with her milking. That usually happens with the milder weather in the spring and in the fall when she's on fresh pasture and being rotationally grazed through the pasture. So right now she's producing about 2 gallons of milk per day, which equals 14 gallons of milk every week. In the colder months of the winter and in the heat of the summer, her supply does go down some, so we might average around 1.5 gallons per day or 10 to 12 gallons of milk per week. We haven't always been homesteaders or have had a family milk cow. In fact, when we got Thimble 4 years ago, neither Jim or I had ever milked an animal in our lives. We weren't planning on getting a family milk cow, but a unique opportunity came our way that we couldn't say no to. So some friends who had her as their family milk cow were getting rid of her and decided they needed to rehome her, and they asked us if we wanted her. At the time, we had no land, we lived in town, and we had no experience. We'd never milked an animal in our lives, but we couldn't say no. It just felt like the right thing to do. And so thankfully, we had some close friends about 10 minutes away with a farm. They let us keep her on their farm, and every morning I would bundle our 1-year-old and our 3-year-old up, and we would head over to the farm to milk Thimble, and that is when we learned how to milk a cow. So it has been a wild ride, but we are so thankful that we said yes to that opportunity. And then about a year after we got her is when we found our little 5-acre homestead here, and we have been going strong milking her ever since. We've only ever milked Thimble once a day, so we do once a day milking, and every night we separate her from her calf June. And even though June at this point is already weaned, we still separate them just because that's what they're used to. And even after she's weaned, her supply just regulates. So we've never had to do twice a day milking. We've always just done once a day, and that works out really well for our family. I prefer to get up early and milk her and not have to worry about milking her a second time throughout the day, and that provides plenty of milk. 14 gallons of milk is plenty for us, so once a day milking works really well. Before getting Thimble, we did buy milk straight from a farm. We did buy fresh milk, but if you've bought milk straight from a farm, you know how pricey it can be. So we'd usually only get about 1 gallon per week when we did that. And every drop of that milk was so precious. So having this amount of milk is pretty new to our family since we've had Thimble for the last 4 years. After we finish milking, we have to come in and strain the milk. So there are fancy strainers that you can buy to do this, but we find that just using a mesh strainer lined with a dish towel works really well to strain out any hairs or flies that might have gotten into the milk. So that has always been our routine for straining the milk. So we strain it and we pour it into jars. One of the big questions I had before we got Thimble was, what are we going to do with all of that milk? But honestly, I've been shocked at how easy it's been to use 12 to 14 gallons of milk every week. So off the top, I try to freeze at least 1 gallon of milk every week, and this is because Thimble is due with a calf in April, and so when she calves, we're gonna dry her up about 2 months before she calves. And so I'm trying to stockpile some extra milk in the freezer to have for that 2-month window when we won't be getting any fresh milk. After the fresh milk has been in the fridge for about 24 hours, the first thing I do is I scoop some of the cream off the top. So unless we're using the milk to make cheese, I skim off the cream for any other milk. And so this is what we use to make sour cream, ice cream, and butter every week. I find the easiest way to do this is with a 1/4 cup measuring cup. So that just fits really nicely in those wide mouth mason jars. And then a lot of our milk gets used for just fresh drinking. With 4 young kids, we can go through a lot of milk. I'd say right now we're just drinking about a half gallon to 1 gallon of milk every day. Our kids drink it with a lot of meals, and Jim and I like to drink it fresh too. So I would say a good 5 to 7 gallons of milk every week just gets put towards fresh drinking. Besides what we use for freezing and for fresh drinking, there are 5 main dairy recipes that our family makes every week. And so those are yogurt, cheese, sour cream, butter, and ice cream. Those are our staples. And so we actually have a free ebook that has all of those dairy recipes as well as some others. So I'll post the link to that so you can grab it below. Every week, our family goes through about a half gallon to a gallon's worth of yogurt, and I love making yogurt. It's so easy. So to make yogurt, I always start it first thing in the morning when I get up around 5:30 in the morning. And so to make it, you just pour a half gallon of milk into a crock pot. Set the timer on low for 2 hours and 30 minutes and let it just sit there and do its thing. And then after the 2 hours and 30 minutes are up, you're gonna turn it off, unplug it, and then just let it sit there for an additional 3 hours. After that 3 hours is up, you're gonna add a half a cup of yogurt. So this can be store-bought yogurt, or it can be just a half a cup of yogurt from your previous batch of yogurt. This is your starter culture. So you're gonna add that into that heated up milk, insulate it with a couple of towels, and then you just let that milk sit there all day, do its thing. You just go on with your day and just let that sit, and over the next 8 to 10 hours, that's gonna turn into yogurt. And so after 8 to 10 hours has passed, this is usually before I go to bed, you uncover those towels, you're gonna take off the lid, and your yogurt is ready. Now I like to skim, there's usually a layer of whey that forms at the top, so I usually just skim that off with a spoon and put it in a jar, and I use that to soak oatmeal with, and then I just scoop the yogurt, the thick creamy yogurt, into mason jars, and that's what we have to eat for the rest of the week. The other big thing that uses the bulk of our milk is making cheese every week. So Jim is the resident cheese maker in our family, and every week he alternates between making mozzarella cheese and making a farmhouse cheddar. So here this week he made farmhouse cheddar for us. He used 2.5 gallons of milk to make this farmhouse cheddar. That's mainly because that's the amount of milk that fits in our big stock pot. Sometimes he'll double that and make 5 gallons of milk at a time, just depending on how much milk we have on hand that needs to get used up. But he has a full step-by-step tutorial of how he makes farmhouse cheddar and how he makes mozzarella that I can link the videos to below. But when we got Thimble, we were not cheese experts at all. But we ended up landing on these 2 recipes because really, they were accessible. They were about the easiest 2 cheese recipes we could find. He learned how to make them, and they have ever since been part of our repertoire. And we love them because it's kind of the best of both worlds. Mozzarella provides us with a really nice, soft, melting cheese that's really good for making like grilled cheese sandwiches, for pizza, for things like that. And then the farmhouse cheddar is a hard cheese, but it's like the most simple hard cheese you can make. And that's perfect for shredding, to add to salads, or, to top. We also use that on our pizza. But it's the nice contrast between the soft cheese and then the hard cheese. So basically then all of our cheese needs are met between these 2 cheeses. The process to make either of those cheeses usually takes Jim about 2 hours from start to finish. So there's definitely a time cost involved there, but we have found it to be so worth it, even for our whole family, for our kids to see this process of milk turning into cheese is really just so cool. So we love that being kind of a staple part of our week. And if making a hard cheese like farmhouse cheddar sounds intimidating, don't be. It was totally intimidating to us at first too, but really Jim's made the process super easy. We don't even own a cheese press. He just rigged this one up between some different pots that we have, and it works great. So growing up in the suburbs and never having made fresh butter before in my life, it still kind of blows my mind that this is a normal part of our world, but we make all of our own fresh butter every week. And so making butter is really simple. My two biggest tips are to not use super fresh cream for making butter. Have it be at least 3 or 4 days old. It seems to work better that way. And then the other really important tip is to let your cream sit out for at least 2 to 3 hours so it's closer to room temperature before making that butter. Once the butter fat separates from the buttermilk, you're just gonna strain out the buttermilk and scoop your butter fat into a jar. You can use the fresh buttermilk for baking or cooking, or our kids just like to drink it straight up like a glass of milk. And I find that each pint of cream equals about 1 cup of butter. So it's about half of the cream turns into butter. So if you're making a quart worth of cream, that's gonna yield roughly a pint of butter. Butter freezes super well, so we also like to stockpile butter in our freezer to have, especially for the winter when we don't make as much butter, because the cream in the winter just doesn't seem as well suited for making butter as when she's on fresh grass. I like to pair making butter with making ice cream. That way I don't need to wash my blender in between. So usually right after I make my butter, I go into making ice cream. And ice cream is one of those things that I feel like sounds really fancy, like it would be hard to make, but I promise you it's about the easiest dessert you can make. You simply throw 5 or 6 really staple farmhouse ingredients into a blender, mix them up, and then add them to your ice cream maker. And we are ones to be pretty minimal when it comes to kitchen appliances, but an ice cream maker is definitely one that is worth its space in your cabinets, in my opinion. So we got our ice cream maker when we got married about 15 years ago. It's like the most basic Cuisinart ice cream maker that you can find on the market, but it has worked well. It's kept up with regular use and it's been great. So they have a wide range of ice cream makers out there. You can get really fancy, expensive ones, or you can get basic ones, but in our opinion, this one has worked just fine. And you can also find ice cream makers all the time used for really cheap. The most common issue I hear people having with making ice cream is that when they put it in their ice cream maker, it doesn't solidify or get like thick and creamy, but it stays liquidy. So if you ever have that issue, the culprit that I've always found is that your ice cream bowl, like the freezer ice cream bowl, is not cold enough. So make sure you're chilling that bowl in the coldest part of your freezer, and you may need to turn your freezer down to an even colder setting in order to get the ice cream to be that nice, thick, creamy texture. The last home dairy recipe that we make every week is cultured cream, also known as sour cream. So our kids gobble this stuff up like it's going out of style. They'll eat it just straight off the spoon. So we definitely need to make this one every week, but making it is so easy. All you do is you're gonna heat up your cream to be about 85 to 90 degrees Fahrenheit, just so it's warm. You're gonna add a mesophilic culture to that cream, something like buttermilk, or you can buy a mesophilic culture. And then after it's heated up, you're gonna just insulate it with some towels and let it sit overnight or all day for about 12 to 14 hours. Let it just sit, do its thing. It's gonna culture. And then after that time is up, you're gonna have nice, thick, creamy, sour cream. Before getting our family milk cow, I could have never imagined how our family would drink or use 14 gallons of milk every week. But now that we have her, it just seems like part of our normal everyday routines. These recipes just kind of fit in seamlessly in our world. And I think honestly, we'd really, really miss them if they weren't there.